Hello and welcome to Rules and Rulings, helping you to be judge, jury, but hopefully not executioner of your 5e D&D game. Today we're getting our hands dirty with another aspect of spellcasting, the cat's cradles and jazz hands that are somatic components. Always a good sign when the rules start with a suggestion instead of a declaration. The description for somatic components in the handbook says they might include forceful gesticulations or an intricate set of gestures. They equally might not by that wording. What is made clear is the second element. If a somatic component is required, the caster must have free use of at least one hand to perform them. The vast majority of spells that require somatic components also require verbal components, so if we set aside the rules don't make clear if somatic components are supposed to be obvious, we're left with the obvious cost for using them: a free hand. We can generally assume that most characters have two hands to work with. Having a physical requirement for casting spells is interesting because it allows for mages to be restricted in their spellcasting in a way that makes sense in the world. It stands to reason that a sorcerer bound in manacles or wrapped up in vines can't swing their arms around to summon a cone of magical ice. But somatic components aren't really integrated into the game cleanly enough for that. Instead, we have a bunch of rules scattered about that make figuring out whether you can cast a spell so much of a puzzle that many tables just skip it entirely. Wouldn't be hard to include, can't provide the somatic components of spells, in the restrained condition, for example. The main purpose of somatic components seems to be to divide the spellcasters from the martials, requiring the former to forego wielding either weapons or shields in order to properly cast their spells. This is somewhat muddled by the additional rules that are included to facilitate the battle priest and paladin class fantasies. Straying into the realm of material components, clerics and paladins can use holy symbols, which can be worn or emblazoned on their shields. When they use these symbols to replace the material components of the spell, they can also use the same hand that holds the symbol to perform the somatic component, but they cannot perform the somatic component while holding the symbol if it is not replacing a material component, which is just confusing from a narrative point of view. It would sort of make sense if using actual components so they could be scattered or spread in such a way that somatic components are less necessary. But when it comes to holy symbols, why is the gesticulating with a shield sufficient when a spell needs holy water, but not for an arguably simpler spell? And if you followed all that, you're doing better than a lot of newer players. This kind of puzzling together of rules is the first thing that gets hand-waved when players are confused. And that's without getting into the fact that spells like Burning Hands specify a specific hand gesture that requires two hands. So there you have somatic components. Not overly clear in their wording and not terribly well integrated into the design of the game as a whole. Do you make somatic components matter in your games? Do you think rolling it into the restrained condition would be a good change? Let me know what you think in the comments and I'll see you next time.